Howdy, Mike McCoy. What you up to? Now I'm gonna talk about fishing, trout fishing, big matter of fact. When I was a boy, I grew up on a trout stream, Big Laurel. And some of my fondest memories of a child fishing on that trout stream, we used to just absolutely have a blast on that. Us boys would fish and we'd take truck inner tubes and make rafts and stuff out of it. That was our playground. And the first day of fishing season was the event. That was the event of all events over there on Laurel for us young fellas. And this was about 1962 or 3. I was 11 or 12 years old. And there was a hole right down below the house that I'd done picked out to fish that morning. For us youngins, we knowed where about every trout was in that creek, and they'd stocked that hole, so I knowed there's some fish there. And it was probably the deepest hole in the creek. Big Laurel is not a great big creek. It's anywhere from probably 20 to 30 foot wide most of the ways down through there. And most of it's anywhere from knee deep to waist deep. But there was one hole right there, and it was just a sheer drop off. And I don't know how deep it was. I know it was over my head, for I fell in it one time, scared me half to death. You couldn't reach the bottom. But it wasn't a big hole. It maybe 5, 6 foot across. So I get down there, and it just breaking daylight good, and I'm sitting there fishing. And it's pretty cold. And they was just people everywhere. And there's a certain amount of etiquette about trout fishing. You don't just wade through somebody's fishing hole when you come wading down the creek. You'll go around the other side there and, not disturb where they're fishing. Or you don't come up and start a conversation, start fishing in their hole. You just don't do that. Well, I heard something up the creek there. I could see a pretty good way. And I looked up through there, and there was a fella coming down through there, and he's as big as I am now. I bet you that man weighed 350 pounds. And he had the longest fishing pole I'd ever seen in my life. That thing had to be 10 foot long. This is the 60s, and a Zebco reel was pretty much top of the line. If you was grown and had your own fishing pole, you might have one of them Mitchell spinning reels. But most of the people had a little old Zebco or just a jerk pole. I think all I had was a jerk pole. Just go cut you a pole and tie a line on it. And here that feller, he is just throwing that line every which way. It's just a sight to behold. I'd never seen nothing like that before in my life. And he was just like a big old horse just clomping down the creek, just splash, splash, splash. I thought, what in the world is that? And there was plenty of rough room on the other side of the creek. He could have went around me, no problem at all. But right down through there he come. He ain't spoke to me yet. And just throwing that lure every which way, beating the bushes out of that big old long fishing pole. And he had on a pair of not hip waders, chest waders, come all the way up here. And I'd never seen them before. I'd seen hip waders. A few of the grown men in the community had hip waders, but I'd never seen a set of chest waders. And I'd never seen a fly fishing pole, and that's what this thing was. And I don't think that man had ever seen one before either, for I don't believe he knowed what he's doing, but it didn't stop him from trying. And under one arm he had a little basket, I reckon you call that a creel, and over his shoulder was a net, and all this stuff could have had the price tags on for his all brand new. And he had the funkiest little hat I ever seen. It was a little white hat, and all around the band of it was them flies that he had stuck there, or hooked there or something. And I think he might have been smoking a cigar. I can't remember. But right here he come, just a splattering and a splashing along. And I thought, well, surely to God, he ain't gonna wade through my fishing hole. Well, I no more than thought that. And the man was so close, I could have touched him with my fishing pole. I might could have touched him with my hand. And right in that deep hole he went, just plump. And he was gone for, I'd say 5 seconds anyway. And the only thing it stayed, when he went in that hole, his little hat come off his head and down the creek it went. I can still see that thing floating down the creek. Well, and 5, maybe 10 seconds. It seemed like it was longer than that, but it couldn't have been. He popped back up. And by this time, he was on his back, floating down the creek, digging for everything he was worth. And I swear to God, them chest waders had to be 4 foot across. He looked like one of them young'uns on that Winnie Wonka chocolate factory. He was round. Well, he finally beat and banged around and crawled up on the bank about 20 foot below me there, and he was just gaping for air. He just about drowned. I mean, he was trying to get that water out of them waders, and it was right cold that morning. I mean, it was probably in the 40s, maybe 30s, I don't know, it was cold. He finally wallered around there like a big hog and got to where he could stand up. I said, mister, I believe your hat's on down the creek there. I seen it floating down through there. He mumbled something and come back up in the road. As the maddest man, and I was laughing so hard I was crying. I'd never seen nothing like that. Over in there, we didn't never get out much, and we didn't know about fly fishing and creels, and I mean, you cut you a little old stick and left a limb on it down there, and that's what you strung your fish up with. And you bait, you put in a Prince Albert can, the tobacco come in, it's about that square, it's just right to put worms in. And if you was lucky, you had 2 or 3 sinkers and 2 or 3 hooks, and that was it. But this feller was decked out. I mean, he looked like something you'd see on one of these magazines, except he was a little bit overweight. But you just hadn't seen him go down in that hole. I mean, and it was the only hole in that creek that I knowed of anywhere within probably a mile there. It was over his head. Right down in there he went, and he come popping out, and he was a gaping for air and a blowing and a puffing, and he wasn't in a good mood. He finally come out there, and I don't think he ever went looking for his hat. I walked down through there an hour or 2 after that and tried to see if I could find it, but somebody else had got it, or it had washed on down the creek or something or other. But now that was a sight to behold. That's the only time I'd ever seen anything like that up until that time. I mean, now you can go over there and see people fly fishing and stuff, and it's a pretty common event. But in 1962, they just wasn't that many people ventured over in there with fancy stuff. Most people just had common fishing poles, I thought he was going to drown. Talk to you later.